Colonel David was on his way back to the city after a long week at the base. He drove a simple dark car, nothing special, nothing that showed his rank or status. He liked it that way. He enjoyed quiet roads, open sky, and the soft hum of the engine. After many days of meetings, reports, and training, he finally had a chance to visit his family. His wife had made dinner. His daughter had sent him a message telling him she had drawn a new picture at school. He wanted to reach them soon. The road he took was an old highway near a small town. It was peaceful. Trees lined the sides. The sun was setting. David felt calm. He was the kind of man who never looked for trouble. He had served his country for 20 years and believed in discipline and respect. Even though he had seen many challenges during his service, he still trusted people, trusted the system, and trusted that most things worked the way they should. But that day, something unexpected happened. A police car appeared behind him. At first, David thought it was going to pass him, but the car stayed close and then turned on its lights. Red and blue flashed behind him. David looked at his speed. He was under the limit. He had signaled every turn. He had done nothing wrong. Still, he slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. He believed in cooperation. If someone wanted to talk to him, he would talk. The police car stopped. One officer stepped out. His name tag said Officer Grant. He walked toward David's window with quick steps and a tense jaw. David had seen faces like that before on missions, on checkpoints, on training fields. It was the face of someone ready for a conflict even when none existed. David lowered his window and kept both hands on the steering wheel. He did this out of habit. Clear hands, calm voice, cooperative attitude. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" David asked. Officer Grant frowned as if the very question annoyed him. "License and registration." David nodded. "Of course. They are in the glove box. I will reach for them slowly." The officer crossed his arms as if he expected something else. David opened the glove box and took out the papers. He handed them over. Grant looked at the documents but did not really focus on them. Instead, he stared at David. "You seem nervous," Grant said. David blinked once. "I am not nervous. I just want to understand why I was stopped." Grant stepped closer. "This car looks out of place on this road." David took a calm breath. "I am heading home to my family." "That's so," Grant said with a tone that did not sound convinced. "Where are you coming from?" David pointed toward the direction of the large military base. "From the base." Grant narrowed his eyes. "The base." He looked over the car again. "And what do you do there?" David kept his voice steady. "I serve there." The officer tapped the license in his hand. A lot of people say that. He leaned forward. "Step out of the car." David hesitated for a second. There was no reason for this request. Still, he complied. He opened the door and stood outside. The cool evening wind brushed against his uniform shirt. Grant looked at the uniform and became even more suspicious. "That uniform looks new." "You sure you did not buy it from somewhere?" Grant asked. David looked him in the eye. "I earned it through many years of service." Grant walked around him like he was inspecting something dangerous. "Show me proof you are really military." David raised an eyebrow. "You have my license and my registration. You can call the number listed there and confirm my identity. I am Colonel David from the National Army." The moment he said his rank, Grant stiffened. Instead of respecting the rank, he looked even more aggressive. "Colonel, you expect me to believe you are a colonel driving an old car on a lonely road? You think I was born yesterday?" David stayed calm, but inside he felt a pressure rise. He had met people who misunderstood him, but this was different. This was a situation where someone in authority was acting unfairly. Grant stepped closer, too close. "I think you are hiding something," he said. David lifted his hand slightly in a peaceful gesture. "Officer, I advise you to run my name through your system. You will get the truth." Grant shook his head. "No, you stand right here while I check your car." David frowned. "Do you have a reason to search my car?" Grant pointed a finger at him. "I decide what reason I need." David felt something shift in the air. He knew this was not going to be a simple stop anymore. He could feel tension growing like a storm. He needed to handle this with care. He had experienced moments far more dangerous than this, but he had also seen how one wrong move, one wrong assumption, one wrong approach could turn a quiet situation into a disaster. While Grant searched the car without permission, David stood by the roadside. Cars passed by now and then, but no one stopped. The sun continued to sink. The sky grew darker. David felt the long day catching up with him. When Grant returned, he looked upset. He had found nothing. There was nothing to find. David had served with honor for many years. His record was clean. Grant stepped in front of him. "You think you are clever. You think wearing a uniform makes you special," David replied. "I am only asking for fair treatment." Grant scoffed. "Fair treatment? You get what I give you." At that moment, David felt something inside him harden. Something calm but firm. He pulled out his phone. "Officer Grant, I will now call the base. They will confirm my rank and identity." Grant smirked. "Go ahead. Let us see who picks up." David dialed a number that only high-ranking officers had. It was the direct line to the Pentagon communication office. When the call connected, a calm voice answered. "Pentagon operations. Please identify yourself." David spoke clearly. "This is Colonel David. I am pulled over on Highway 10 near River Point Town. I am being detained without reason." The voice on the line became sharp. "Understood. Stay where you are. Assistance will be initiated immediately." Grant tried to snatch the phone, but David stepped back. "That was not a normal number," Grant muttered. "Who did you call?" David did not answer. He simply waited. He knew what was about to happen. When a colonel reported an unfair stop, the system responded fast. The Pentagon did not ignore its officers. Minutes passed, and the quiet road suddenly felt charged. Grant paced back and forth, unsure what to do next. He kept looking at David, then at the road, then back at David again. The officer's earlier confidence was fading. David stood still. .com/silent. Focused. He had handled harder situations before. Now he only needed to wait, because help was already coming. And when it arrived, nothing on that quiet road would stay the same. Colonel David stood on the side of the quiet road as evening turned into night. The air grew cooler, and the wind carried the distant sound of trucks from the far end of the highway. He remained calm, hands by his sides, feet steady on the ground. Years of training kept him composed even when the situation felt unfair. Officer Grant, on the other hand, was no longer calm. He kept pacing back and forth beside his patrol car. His earlier confidence was fading fast. He had never heard anyone call a place like that from the side of a road. The tone of the person on the phone had sounded official, controlled, and sharp. Grant felt something he had not felt earlier, doubt, but he still acted stubborn. He turned to David. "No one is coming. You can stop pretending." David did not respond. Silence from him only made Grant more nervous. The officer rubbed the back of his neck and kept looking at the dark road. His fingers tightened around the flashlight in his hand. A few minutes later, everything changed. A loud hum filled the air, not from the road, from above. Grant looked up and saw two military helicopters approaching from the east, flying low over the treetops. Their lights swept across the highway. The sound was powerful and unmistakable, the kind of sound heard only during major operations. Grant's face went pale. David remained still. The helicopters slowed and hovered above the area but did not land. They formed a circle, keeping their beams pointed toward the road. It looked like the sky itself was watching. Grant stumbled backward. "What is this? Why are they here?" Before David could answer, 3 dark vehicles appeared from the direction of the town. They approached fast and stopped sharply near the patrol car. The doors opened, and several military security officers stepped out. They wore dark uniforms, each marked with high security clearance badges. The lead officer walked toward David with quick steps. "Colonel David, are you safe?" David nodded. "I am safe." The officer turned and looked straight at Grant. His expression changed from formal concern to cold authority. "Officer Grant, please step away from the colonel." Grant froze. His voice cracked when he spoke. "I was only doing my job," the lead officer replied. "We received a report that you detained a senior ranking officer without cause. All actions from this point are being recorded." Grant looked from one face to another, trying to understand how the situation had escalated so quickly. "He did not show me any special ID. He only said he was a colonel." "People lie about things like that all the time." David spoke calmly. "You were given my license, my registration, and you had the ability to confirm everything. Instead, you chose to ignore my identity and escalate the situation without reason." Grant shook his head. "I did nothing wrong." "You were acting suspicious." The lead officer stepped forward. "Suspicious? How was he suspicious?" Grant hesitated. He opened his mouth but said nothing. He had no answer that made sense, so he tried again. "This road is not usually used by people from the base." And he looked like he came from somewhere important. Something felt off. David looked at him steadily. "Officer Grant, suspicion is not enough to mistreat someone." Grant clenched his jaw. "I did not mistreat you before the tension could rise further." One of the military officers spoke into a communication device. "Team 2, confirmed location. Preparing report for Pentagon office." Grant's eyes widened. "Report for what?" The lead officer lowered his voice. "For your behavior during this stop." Grant stepped back again. "Wait, you cannot do that. I followed procedure." David finally spoke with quiet authority. "Procedure does not include stopping someone without reason. Procedure does not include searching a car without cause. Procedure does not include ignoring a valid ID and refusing to run a verification check. You did more than one thing wrong tonight." Grant looked down, struggling to find words. The situation was slipping from his control. The flashing lights of the police car looked weak compared to the powerful beams from the helicopters above. A new vehicle approached from the opposite direction. This one was different, black, large, and clearly important. When it stopped, a man in a suit stepped out. He wore a badge on his chest that marked him as a senior Pentagon liaison officer, a person who rarely appeared outside secure locations. He walked toward David with a respectful nod. "Colonel David, your report reached the Pentagon. We moved the closest response team to your location. Are you injured or in any danger?" "No," David replied. "Only tired. I was heading home." The liaison then turned toward Grant. "Officer Grant, your actions today are under active review by the Pentagon and the State Security Division. You ignored identification, refused to verify credentials, and placed unnecessary pressure on a high-ranking officer. That cannot be overlooked. Grant's knees weakened. I never meant harm. Intent is only part of the matter, the liaison said. Your choices created risk, and they created unnecessary conflict. Grant looked at David again, this time with fear mixed into his expression. Colonel, I did not realize who you were, David answered gently. That is exactly the point. You should treat everyone with respect no matter who they are or what they look like. You should have followed procedure, not assumptions. The words hit Grant harder than anything else. The liaison officer continued. You will cooperate with the immediate review. Until then, your patrol rights are suspended. Grant's shoulders dropped. He had lost control of the situation completely. He stepped aside as two state officers arrived to speak with him privately. One of the Pentagon officers approached David. Colonel, we can escort you home if you wish. David shook his head. Thank you, but I can drive. I only want to reach my family. The officer nodded. Understood. But one vehicle will follow. At a distance to make sure the road is clear. David accepted the offer. He did not want more trouble for anyone. He simply wanted the night to end peacefully. He walked back to his car. The door was still open from when Grant had searched it. He closed it gently, sat inside, and took a long breath before starting the engine. Before he drove off, he looked at the scene one last time. Grant stood in silence, surrounded by investigators. Helicopters hovered above like silent watchers. Military officers studied every detail of the stop. The quiet road from earlier was now a place, filled with sharp lights and strong voices, and all of it had started from one unfair decision. David drove away with a calm heart, but he also knew something important. This was not the end. The review would uncover more, and the Pentagon never ignored such events. As he headed toward the city lights, he sensed that part 2 of this story was done, but the real storm had only just begun. Colonel David drove toward the city with steady hands on the wheel. The road was clearer now. The night air felt cooler against the windows, and the stars slowly appeared between drifting clouds. Even with the escort vehicle following far behind, the silence in his car felt heavy. He kept thinking about the stop, about how quickly something peaceful had turned into something stressful. But more than anything, he thought about his family. His wife Lena would be waiting. She always worried when he traveled late. His daughter Mila would be drawing or reading, waiting to show him her work. He wanted to see them and forget the trouble on the highway. Still, he knew the situation was not fully over. He knew the review team would continue their work. When the Pentagon opened a case, they completed it to the last detail. After some time, he reached the city entrance. The escort car lowered its speed and turned onto a different road. The driver inside gave a simple signal with the headlights. It meant the escort was ending and the road ahead was safe. David appreciated the gesture. It was quiet support, the kind he respected. He reached his home, parked the car, and stepped out. As he walked to the front door, the porch light turned on. Lena opened the door before he could knock. She looked at him carefully, as if sensing something happened. You were late, she said softly. He nodded. There was a delay on the way. She stepped closer and searched his face. Are you all right? I am fine, he said with a calm smile. Just tired. She knew there was more, but she also knew David well. He would tell her when he was ready. So she took his hand and guided him inside. Their daughter Mila ran out from her room the moment she heard his voice. She held a new drawing in her hand. It showed a small family holding hands under a big tree. David sat down and pulled her close. It is beautiful, he said. She grinned proudly and leaned against him. Moments like this always grounded him more than anything else in his life. Even after commanding hundreds of soldiers and handling stressful missions, he still felt most at peace when sitting with his family. They ate dinner together. After Mila went to sleep, David finally told Lena everything that happened on the road. He spoke calmly, explaining each detail. Lena listened without interrupting. When he finished, she placed a hand on his arm. You handled it well, she said. I am glad you stayed calm, David nodded. I had to. Sometimes control is the only thing we have. She looked at him with gentle eyes. Will there be trouble for that officer? There will be a review, David replied. The system will decide the result. He did not wish harm for anyone, but he believed in fairness. When someone in a position of authority acted without responsibility, things needed to be corrected. Later that night, after Lena went to bed, David sat on the balcony. The city lights glowed in the distance. He looked at the sky and thought about his training, his responsibilities, his years in service. He had always believed in order and respect. What happened on the road was a reminder that some people forgot these things, but he also knew the Pentagon would follow up. They always did. He was right while he rested at home. The review team gathered at the local station. Officer Grant sat in a small meeting room. His uniform looked less perfect now. His confidence was gone. Two state investigators sat across from him. A Pentagon representative stood near the corner, arms crossed. Grant kept his hands on the table. His voice was unsteady. I did not mean to cause trouble, one investigator replied. Then explain why you ignored the identification he gave you. Grant rubbed his forehead. It did not seem real. The Pentagon representative stepped forward. Colonel David is a decorated officer with years of service. His information is recorded in every system. If you had typed his name into your device, you would have known immediately. Why did you not check? Grant swallowed hard. I thought it was fake. People lie about things like that, the investigator asked. So you based your actions on your own assumptions instead of following procedure. Grant looked down. Maybe I did. The room stayed silent for a moment. The investigators exchanged glances. The Pentagon representative spoke again. Your actions placed unnecessary pressure on a senior officer. They also created a risk, not only for him, but for the entire response system. Do you understand the seriousness of this? Grant nodded slowly. I understand now. The investigator wrote something on a tablet. A temporary suspension will continue until the full report is reviewed. More decisions will follow. Grant exhaled and leaned back. He knew his career was in danger. He knew he should have handled the stop in a better way. He kept remembering how the helicopters appeared, how the officials arrived, how quickly everything changed. It showed him something important. His small decision had triggered a major response. Outside the station, 2 military officers waited near a dark car. They had been sent to collect information for the Pentagon. One of them spoke quietly to the other. This review is going to be a big one. The second officer nodded. Colonel David is respected. When something happens to someone like him, the Pentagon takes it seriously back at home. David finally went to bed. As he lay beside his wife, he thought about the future. He did not want trouble for anyone. His only wish was for fairness and respect to be maintained. But he also knew one simple truth. When unfair treatment reached the wrong target, consequences followed. The next morning, David woke early and prepared to return to the base. He had a meeting scheduled. As he reached for his uniform jacket, his phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a Pentagon number. He answered. Colonel David, speaking a formal voice, replied. Colonel, the review related to last night has begun. We may need your statement later today. Understood, David said. I will cooperate fully, the voice continued. This matter is already gaining attention at higher levels. We will keep you updated. David ended the call and stood still for a moment. He knew this would grow into something larger. The Pentagon did not call early in the morning unless the situation had gained serious weight. He stepped outside, locked the door, and walked toward his car. Another day was beginning. Another part of the story was moving forward. He did not know what the full investigation would reveal, but he knew one thing with certainty. The sun rose gently as Colonel David drove toward the base. The golden light touched the tops of buildings, and the road slowly filled with early morning traffic. Even with the peaceful glow of the new day, David felt a steady weight in his chest. He knew the investigation had only just begun. The call from the Pentagon early that morning confirmed it. When he reached the base gate, the guard standing there straightened the moment he saw David's ID. Good morning, Colonel. The command office wants to see you as soon as you arrive. David nodded. Thank you. He parked his car and walked across the clean, organized base. Soldiers were already in formation, preparing for their drills. The familiar sounds of boots on pavement and sharp voices calling out commands filled the air. It made him feel grounded. This was where order lived. This was where respect mattered. Inside the main building, a staff officer guided him to a conference room. When David entered, 3 officials were already seated. One was the base commander, General Reed. Another was a Pentagon liaison. The third was a legal advisor. General Reed stood up with a calm expression. David, please sit. We need to discuss. Last night, David took a seat. The Pentagon liaison opened a folder. Colonel, your report reached our office quickly. The response team acted based on protocol for senior officers. David nodded. I appreciate the support, but I do not want the situation to turn personal. I only want correct procedure to be followed. The legal advisor spoke next. Your position makes the case sensitive. When someone with your rank is handled unfairly, it raises many questions. We need your full account. Again, David explained the entire event clearly. He described how he was pulled over, how his documents were ignored, how the officer refused to verify his identity, and how the situation escalated without cause. He did not add extra emotion. He kept it factual. When he finished, General Reed leaned back. You stayed calm. Many people in your place would have reacted strongly. You did the right thing, the Pentagon liaison added. The review is expanding. We discovered that last night was not the first time Officer Grant acted carelessly with certain citizens. There were earlier complaints. None of them reached high levels, but they are now being reopened. David listened quietly. He did not wish to see anyone punished, but he understood the importance of addressing patterns. The liaison continued. We may ask you to speak with the State Review Board later today. I will be available, David replied. The meeting ended shortly after. David returned to his office, but he could not focus on reports or schedules. His mind kept returning to the thought that one small moment could create such wide waves. Later that morning, he received another call. It was from a state investigator. Colonel, we request your presence at the central station. We need your... The statement recorded for the official file. David agreed and drove to the station. When he entered, other officers in the building recognized him from the news that had begun spreading. Some nodded respectfully. Some looked tense. The event had already reached their ears. Inside a quiet interview room, the investigators asked him to recount everything again for the record. David spoke slowly, making sure every detail was clear. When the session ended, the lead investigator shook his hand. Thank you, Colonel. The case is very important to us. We want to ensure everything is handled correctly. David nodded and left the room. Across the hallway, Officer Grant was seated in a separate room. His uniform was wrinkled. He looked exhausted. Two supervisors spoke with him. "We reviewed more reports from earlier months," one said. "You acted without proper cause more than once." Grant stared at the floor. "I thought I was doing my job." The supervisor shook his head. "Your job includes following rules. You cannot let personal judgment replace proper checks." Grant swallowed hard. He knew he had made serious errors. He also knew the case involving the colonel had brought everything into the light. He felt the consequences closing in around him. Meanwhile, as David walked out of the station building, a few reporters had gathered outside after hearing rumors of military involvement. They held cameras and microphones, waiting to ask questions. A state officer quickly approached David. "Colonel, we advise you not to speak to them at this time." David agreed. He stepped through a side exit to avoid attention. He had no desire to turn the incident into a public story. He valued privacy and professionalism. He drove back to the base, trying to settle his mind, but at the base entrance, another officer approached him. "Colonel, there's a message for you. The Pentagon wants a video call in 1 hour." David thanked him and went straight to the communication office. When the call connected, 3 high-ranking officials appeared on the screen. Their expressions were serious but respectful. One of them spoke. "Colonel David, the situation involving the traffic stop has reached higher review. We want you to know that we take this matter seriously, not just because of your rank, but because fairness must be protected for everyone. You will likely be asked to present your account once more to a national review group later this week." David nodded calmly. "I will cooperate with everything required," another official added. "Your conduct during the event was commendable. You stayed calm, followed instructions, and acted responsibly. That is part of the reason this case is receiving strong attention." David thanked them and ended the call. When he left the office, he noticed a few soldiers whispering nearby. One of them stepped forward shyly. "Sir, we heard a bit about what happened. We just want you to know that we respect how you handled it. You set a good example for us." David felt a warm sense of responsibility grow inside him. "Thank you. Always remember that staying calm is part of strength." The soldiers nodded proudly. Later in the afternoon, David went to the training field to clear his mind. He watched young soldiers practice their drills. Their energy reminded him why he served, why he believed in fairness, why he believed people in authority needed to act with care. As he watched them, his phone buzzed again. It was Lena. "How is everything?" she asked softly. "It is moving," David replied. "There is more work to do, but the truth is being found." "I believe in you," Lena said. "Come home early tonight if you can. Mila is drawing something new for you." David smiled gently. "I will try." He hung up and looked across the field again. The day had been long. Meetings, calls, interviews, official statements. The case was growing, and he knew the next part of this story would bring even more changes, not only for him but for Officer Grant, for the station, and for everyone connected to the event. Part 4 reached its quiet end as David walked slowly back to his office. The evening sun touched his shoulders. A new calm settled in his heart, but he also understood something clearly. The final part of this story was on its way, and it would bring the full truth forward. Colonel Marcus Reed woke before sunrise. The sky was still dark outside his window, but his mind was already full of thoughts. Today was the day the final report would be made public. Today the whole country would learn the truth about what happened on that night when he was pulled over without reason. He sat on the edge of his bed for a moment. His breathing was steady, but deep inside he felt the weight of everything he had carried. He was not angry. He was not afraid. He was simply ready. Ready for the truth. Ready for justice. Ready for the next step in his life as a soldier and as a human being. He stood up, put on his uniform with calm hands, and looked at himself in the mirror. His rank badge reflected the early light. It reminded him of every year he had served, every mission he had completed, and every young soldier he had trained. He whispered to himself in a quiet voice. He said he would stay strong today. He said he would stay patient. He said he would stay grounded then. He left his room and walked out into the corridor. The Pentagon felt different that morning. Many people were already present, even though it was early. Some nodded to him. Some greeted him with respect. Some simply stepped aside so he could pass. Word had traveled fast. Everyone knew the report was being released today. Everyone knew the country was watching. General Harper was waiting for him in the main briefing room. When Marcus entered, the general gave him a small smile, not a forced one, but a sincere one. He asked Marcus if he slept well. Marcus said he slept enough. The general nodded then. Walked together to the long table where the other leaders sat. There were officers from many branches. There were legal experts. There were advisors. There were people from the press office. No one spoke at first. The room held a strange mix of tension and calm. It was the silence before something important, something big. Then the general stood up and spoke in his firm voice. He said that investigation was complete. He said the findings were clear. He said the department would act with responsibility. Everyone listened closely. Marcus listened too, his hands resting on the table. The general explained that the officer who stopped Marcus had misused his authority. He explained that the stop was not based on any rule or reason. He explained that the officer had behaved in an unfair way. There was no denial. There was no excuse. The truth was written in every line of the report. More important than naming the wrong was the next part of the message. The general spoke about change. He spoke about new training. He spoke about new checks and new rules. He spoke about the department's duty to treat every person with fairness and respect. Marcus felt something ease inside him. It was not joy, but relief. It was the feeling of a heavy load being lifted at last. The general then invited Marcus to speak. The room turned quiet again as Marcus stood up. He looked around the table. He looked at the officers. He looked at the advisors. He looked at the general at the end of the table. He thanked everyone for their work. He thanked them for listening. He thanked them for treating the matter with seriousness. He spoke in a calm voice. He did not raise it once. He did not let emotion control him. He simply spoke as a man who loved his country and wanted to see it stand tall. He said he did not want anger. He said he did not want revenge. He said he wanted fairness. He said he wanted respect. For all people, he said he wanted trust between citizens and those who serve. His words were simple. His message was clear. No drama, no heavy emotion, only honesty. When he sat back down, the room remained quiet for a moment. Then the general nodded once with respect. The message had been heard. By midday, the report was released to the public. The press began sharing it. News channels discussed the findings. Many people across the country reacted. Some felt sadness. Some felt relief. Many appreciated that the department had taken responsibility. Many appreciated Marcus for his calm strength. His name appeared in headlines everywhere, but he never asked for any of it. He had only asked for fairness. That afternoon, Marcus walked outside the Pentagon building for some air. The sun was high now. The wind was soft. A few people gathered near the steps. They were reporters, but they kept a respectful distance. Others were soldiers who came to show support. One young soldier approached him slowly. Marcus recognized the nervous look in his eyes. The young man asked if he could speak to him for a moment. Marcus said yes, of course. The young soldier said he admired him. He said he wanted to learn from him. He said he wanted to serve with the same calm heart. Marcus placed a hand on the young man's shoulder and told him to serve with honesty. He told him to serve with respect. He told him to remember that strength was not only in power, but in character. Later that day, he received a message from the Secretary of Defense. She invited him to a private meeting. When Marcus arrived, she thanked him for the grace he showed during the entire process. She said the department was better today because of people like him. She said he had reminded everyone what service meant. She asked him how he felt now. He said he felt steady. She asked what he wanted next. He said he wanted to return to his work. She smiled at that. She told him new responsibilities might come soon. She told him his voice would be important in the coming months as the department made changes. She told him his experience would guide them. Marcus did not expect honors. He did not expect reward. He only wanted improvement. He only wanted fairness to be real, not just written on paper. When she finished speaking, he thanked her and left the room quietly. He went home in the evening. The sky was a soft orange as the sun lowered itself. The world looked calm. The air felt warmer than the morning. Marcus walked to his porch and sat down on the steps. He took a long breath. He closed his eyes. He allowed himself to rest. His phone buzzed after a few minutes. It was a message from his sister, then a message from an old friend, then a message from a soldier he trained years ago. Each message was short and supportive. Many simply said they were proud. He responded to each message with gratitude. Night arrived slowly. The street lights turned on one by one. Marcus stayed outside for a while, enjoying the quiet. He did not think about the past anymore. He did not think about fear. He did not think about the report. He thought about tomorrow. He thought about the soldiers he would meet. He thought about the training he would lead. He thought about the strength of staying calm even when life tested him. He felt peace in that moment, a deep and steady peace. Marcus Reed understood something important now. Justice was not loud. Justice was steady. Justice was patient. Justice was a path walked one step at a time, and he was ready to walk forward. He stood up, opened his door, and stepped inside his home. The day had been long. The day had been heavy. The day had brought truth, but now a new day waited ahead.